One of the many things that make Smiling Friends stand out from other adult animation is the fact that the characters actually like each other. Sure, they might argue here and there, but there's a weirdly wholesome aspect to their bonds.
No biting, okay? You my good little baby, huh?
So today, we're ranking Smiling Friends relationships from healthy to toxic. As per usual, we'll be starting with the healthy relationships before we move into the more questionable categories. I'll admit, there was some pretty steep competition for the most healthy relationship in the series, but there's ultimately only one duo we could go to, Charlie and Tyler. After Mr. Boss callously fired Tyler in the Spamtopia episode, fans around the world were shocked at the absolute shakeup this caused to the status quo. In fact, even people who'd never even heard of Smiling Friends were shocked by it. I saw this homeless guy on the street shouting the name Tyler over and over again just a few weeks after that. Coincidence? Probably, yeah. But one thing's for sure, Charlie and Tyler have an unbreakable bond. We all know Charlie loves his friends, his job, his country, his god, all that good stuff. But when Tyler gets fired, he immediately threatens to quit unless the boss rehires him. Even after Tyler bravely walks away from his work, insisting on not letting Charlie ruin his own career, Charlie is determined to get him rehired when they go out for drinks later on. He only relents when Tyler reveals that he wants to pursue his passion for music. With a single fist bump, the classic era of Smiling Friends ended, but this wonderful, beautiful friendship has only begun. We're giving the runner-up spot to what just might be the most iconic marriage in cartoon history, Glep and Marge Simpson. Marge Simpson might sound familiar since she's based on a certain familiar cartoon character, but her inspiration from Lois Griffin aside, Marge Simpson is the faithful wife of Glep. While we haven't really seen much of her, everything we have seen portrays her as a loving and devoted partner. She holds him in her lap during the Halloween party, the two do fun stuff like beach volleyball and couples costumes, and seem to all around enjoy each other's company. On top of that, we can't really say anything bad about their relationship, which gives them a pretty high placement by default. They've stuck together through everything from presidential terms to racially motivated Halloween party riots, so there's no doubt that they've built a pretty strong bond. Next, we move on to a man who knows 4 employees that he just adores. It's the relationship between Mr. Boss and his boys. Mr. Boss may be an unstable lunatic, but he's also a surprisingly great boss to his employees. Pim, Charlie, Alan, and Glep all genuinely like the boss, enjoying his company when he's around and being concerned for him when he isn't. He also knows how to motivate and assign his employees to their various tasks, from giving Alan more logistics-centered work to encouraging Charlie and Pim's mission to help Mr. Frog. The worst we could say about Mr. Boss as, a boss, is that he does sometimes make his employees uncomfortable. Whether it's singing a personalized song about how much he loves them while naked, or playing a prank involving a concerningly good Jared Fogle cosplay that makes Charlie uncomfortable, he sometimes rubs his boys the wrong way, even if he doesn't mean to. Regardless, he more than makes up for it by always being caring and considerate of his boys. From making a funny dog face to distract Charlie from the aforementioned Jared Fogle prank, to giving Alan a tiny version of himself as a reward for finishing his assignment. Unappreciated or not, the dedication to create a miniature version of yourself as a gift really just shows how much you care. Now, whatever you guys do, don't let Mr. Boss see that Grim and Gnarly made it so high onto our list. These two are the antithesis of the Smiling Friends. A concept so simple yet so diabolical as their business model would make you think they'd have a pretty toxic relationship, but, surprisingly, the Frowning Friends are genuinely affectionate and loving towards one another. After Gnarly insults the Smiling Friends, Grim's first instinct is to compliment him and to tell him that he loves him, a sentiment which Gnarly returns without any hesitation.
Good one, Gnarly. I love you.
And I love you.
These two didn't even need to say no homo after their expressions of platonic love, and that's how you know this is a true friendship. The worst we could say about their bond is the fact that Gnarly does call Grim kinda cringe when he's terrified of dying. Now, I guess that's kinda understandable given how nihilism is their whole shtick, and he does come around and join Grim in his bout of non-evil laughter when they learn that smiling actually feels good, but I just can't help but feel like Gnarly should have been a little more concerned for his best friend being held at gunpoint. But now let's go back across the street to talk about the relationship between Glep and the Smiling Friends. While the other Smiling Friends have less of a black and white web of relationships, one thing is consistent throughout. Much like the fandom itself, everybody loves Glep. He's that one member of the team who causes no drama, gets involved in no drama, does nothing even adjacent to drama. Glep is just here to vibe with his friends and do what he can to help out. What is that? Don't worry about it. He's doing something, and he keeps company morale up just by being there. Of course, he could stand to communicate a little better. Not in terms of words, because, as we all know, Glep is one of the greatest orators of our generation. I mean in terms of telling his friends what he's up to. Glep is friendly and caring towards his buddies, but he's also prone to wandering off and doing things like auditioning for television roles while he's on the job. Still, maybe Glep's unpredictable actions help keep smiles on other employees' faces, in which case, I guess he'd deserve an even higher spot. This next spot needs no introduction. Pim and Charlie have quickly become one of the most iconic pairs of animated besties. The nice thing about Pim and Charlie's friendship is that while they do have a genuinely wholesome friendship, it's one that's also pretty grounded. They bicker sometimes, from Pim calling out Charlie's unenthusiastic attitude in the Christmas special to his jealousy over Mip and Charlie's friendship, and Charlie not paying attention to Pim's feelings in the same episode. But while they don't get along all the time, they're always there for each other when it comes down to it. One small but profound example of this is in the episode Mr. President, where Charlie stumbles into a room full of worms plotting to get Mr. Frog elected. Despite considering Jimble to be utterly incompetent, Charlie refuses to help the worms for the sole reason that Pim is trying to get Jimble elected so he can smile, showcasing his willingness to place his loyalty to his best friend above his work. He's even willing to bail on a party to check out Pim's UFO club in another episode. These two are practically brothers, warts and all. They might fight like brothers, but they'll always end up being there for each other like brothers too. Next, we have the living proof that love at first sight is alive and well. Shrimp and Jennifer. With a kiss like that, you just know these two are going to last. All this sweet woman wanted was a 4-foot-tall shrimp with a receding hairline and a concerning amount of mouse quest memorabilia. It may have been a bit of a letdown for Pim, but it's nice that both she and Shrimp got what they were looking for. Moving back to platonic territory, next we have the iconic friendship of Wimbley and Mr. Millipede. We might have never seen these two interact on screen, but there was a clear camaraderie between them. Mr. Millipede was always there to help Wimbley on his timeless Wimbley adventures like Wimbley 2, Wimbley's Cream Quest, and Wimbley Saves the 4th of July. Given the sheer grief that Wimbley expressed upon finding out that Mr. Millipede had passed away, it's likely these two were pretty close at a time. So why aren't they any higher? Well, we would put them higher if it weren't for the tiny detail that Mr. Millipede has been dead since 2021. According to his gravestone. That means Wimbley and him haven't spoken for at least 4 years, to the point where Wimbley didn't know he was dead until 3 years after the fact. On one hand, the fact that Mr. Millipede didn't invite Wimbley to his funeral is kinda suspicious, but on the other hand, he was kinda busy dying at the time, so I guess we can give him a pass. May he rest in peace. Wait, he was an uncle? On that note, let's move from friends to family, starting with Mr. Boss and Jason. If all we had to go off of was the first episode of the show, we'd probably give these two the top spot. Good parenting is invaluable, and it's clear that Mr. Boss loves his beautiful boy. In the Spamtopia episode, we see Mr. Boss going on a journey to buy a magical red jewel to turn Jason into a butterfly. So, like, was he dying and this was the only way to save him? Or, you know what, maybe it's best not to think about it. All we need to focus on right now is the fact that Mr. Boss loves his 18-year-old son enough to travel to another country to buy a magical red jewel to heal his ailments. He's also kind enough to breastfeed him and keep him filled up with nutrients. Yes, that's right. Jason is old enough to vote, and his father is still breastfeeding him. And Charlie thought Pim kissing his dad on the mouth was weird. Next is a quick mention to the relationship between Charlie and his grandma. We may not have seen much of their bond before her untimely death, but when Charlie runs into his grandmother in hell, we get the sense that they got along pretty well. Charlie sympathizes with her, saying, rightly so, that she really shouldn't be in hell for saying damn in 1958 after watching her husband get shot by a burglar. Likewise, his grandma offers him information on where to find Satan and even offers him a piece of disgusting hard candy for the journey. What a sweet old lady. I'm gonna pass on the candy though. And closing out this category, we have the relationship between Pim and Rotten the Snowman. Just in case anyone hasn't heard that iconic song, Rotten the Snowman was a jolly, horrified at the reality of death soul. When Pim brought him to life with a magical or toxic waste-infused flower, he didn't begin to dance around. Instead, he began to enjoy life with his new best buddy, Pim. Unfortunately, when Pim lets it slip that death is an inevitable reality of life, Rotten ends up horrified, leaving Pim and the gang to find any way they can to bring him somewhere permanently cool so that he can live forever. Which worked pretty well until that absolute force of chaos knocked his cooler over at the beach. His life may have been cut short, but thankfully Rotten found a new purpose as the ocean, or a specific wave in the ocean or something. Point is, he lived a good life and had a good friendship with Pim, even if he probably caused him more than a fair share of headaches. Now let's ride that wave into the next category, for the more questionable connections in the series. These are the rocky relationships. First and foremost in this section, we have the relationship between the Smiling Friends and their clients. It might be controversial to lump them all into the same category, but the fact of the matter is, the Smiling Friends have to do their best to make people smile, no matter the kind of people they are. Sometimes they have pleasant experiences with decent people like Shrimp, Wimbley, or the Enchanted Forest's princess, but other times they'll end up involved with criminals and other chaotic types like Mr. Frog, DJ Spit, and James. It's a gamble whether they're going to make a new friend or narrowly escape with their lives on any given day, or even do both at once, who knows. We respect them for doing good, altruistic work for their clients, but the very nature of the Smiling Friends having to accept every client who comes their way means they can definitely end up with some less than savory interactions. Next, we have the workplace relationship between Pim and Alan. Alan isn't exactly the most sociable guy around, so we don't really see much of him interacting with his coworkers. Still, he generally gets along with them pretty well. When it comes to Pim specifically, he's willing to tag along with them on his quest to get Wimbley a new game. Even if it's for no reason other than to get him off the Smiling Friends' premises, that still shows that Alan is able to work well with Pim, even if they are pretty much polar opposites. By that logic, you'd think that Alan and Charlie might get along even better. Being the two more cynical members of the Smiling Friends, they'd surely be on the same wavelength more often than not, right? But surprisingly, these two don't get along as well as you might think. Alan nommed Charlie's nose in episode 1, and while it was likely an effect of being crucified earlier, it's still worth mentioning for the lasting sense of discomfort Charlie felt as a result. He called Alan out for it later on in season 2, and we see throughout the rest of their B-plot that they tend to bicker a lot. When they believe Jason has died on the job, they almost immediately get at each other's throats and start a full-on physical fight. I can't blame them for being terrified that Jason was dead, but the fact that it escalated so quickly definitely says a lot about how incompatible they are in one-on-one situations. Their relationship isn't toxic by any means though, they get along well sometimes, like when Charlie complimented Alan's idea in the season 2 finale. They can get along just fine, they just seem to work better in a group. Although, admittedly, even in a group setting, Alan refused to tell Charlie what Dr. Monster was. Really makes you think. Former arch-enemies Wimbley and Count Trixia are up next. While spending a whole cult classic video game series beating each other up would usually leave some negative feelings on both ends, Wimbley and Count Trixia are actually pretty chill for a pair of former video game nemesis. I mean, the fact that Trixia even bothered to listen to his old frenemy's request to join in a new gaming endeavor says a lot about their professional relationship. It's clear these two respect each other, if nothing else. But sadly, they're just in different phases of life now. Trixia has a wife and a collared white shirt. That's proof that he's got too many responsibilities to be playing around with indie projects. But hey, maybe he can join as a DLC for Wimbley's Smash clone eventually. From one pair of old acquaintances to another, next we have the friendship between Oscar and Pim. These two were childhood pen pals, with their long-distance friendship being the reason Pim was able to speak Spanish in the first place. Unfortunately, the cultural gap between Pennsylvania and Spamtopia is a pretty broad one, so when Pim accidentally glanced at Oscar's giant eye, he got himself and Mr. Boss an appointment with the executioner, who just so happened to also be Oscar. Thankfully, once Oscar recognizes Pim as an old pal, he spares his and the boss's life, recalling how Pim helped him through his insecurity about his eye. Unfortunately, he also follows this up by laughing at Pim's weird eyes. Like, come on, dude, he was trying to comfort you and you just turned on him like that? It's like that one SpongeBob episode all over again.
Dumb people are always blissfully unaware of how dumb they really are.
Next, we have a pretty huge umbrella entry, the Pimling family. The more I rewatch this show, the more I realize one thing. Man, Pim is going through it. On top of being a hard worker who's nearly been killed multiple times, his family is very dysfunctional. His parents are constantly fighting, his sister openly hates him and doesn't even try to hide it, and then there's the fact that he has a brother enlisted in the military, if this photo and Zach Hadel's comment about it is anything to go by. This means either Pim barely gets to see his brother or he might even be dead. Either one has to add another burden to his stress levels. That said, there are some bright spots. For one thing, despite their bickering, Pim's parents do genuinely seem to love and care about him, and his cousin Graham Nelly seems pretty chill. This family might just need a therapy session or 2 or 10 or 100 or 1,000. And rounding out the gray area, we have the brotherly bond between Doug and Professor Psychotic. The episode Brother's Egg had a lot less to do with the mad scientist character than you might expect going into it. But we're not complaining, the bond between these two is as wholesome as it is awkward. Okay, that's a lie, it's way more awkward than it is wholesome. From Doug losing his temper with his little brother over his constant shouts and experiments to the professor just being a nuisance in general, when Pim convinces Doug to try and talk things out with his brother while he still has a chance to, Professor Psychotic responds by bringing up his brother's painkiller addiction and implies that his mother's death was his fault. That's seriously messed up, and they're only stopped from beating the life out of each other by the birth of Professor Psychotic's, horrifying toe-sucking homunculus thing. Seeing this success was enough for Doug to forgive his little brother, and they decided to work together to raise their son/nephew. I'm with you, Charlie. The world you live in is very stressful, which leads to more than enough toxic relationships to discuss. Kicking off the fully toxic relationships, we have to mention Mr. Boss and Tyler. In what was truly one of the most shocking betrayals in cinema history, Mr. Boss fired his beloved longtime employee Tyler without so much as a 2-week notice. Heck, there wasn't even a 2-minute notice, he just told him to get out. Surprisingly, we never really saw these two interact one-on-one all that much, despite them being two of the most prominent characters in the series. That means we can't really give Mr. Boss any extra points for how their dynamic might have been leading up to the infamous firing, but even if they got along just fine, that would make the firing even harder to swallow. But I guess someone has to deliver the bad news, sort of like the Frowning Friends and their clients. The Frowning Friends might defend their business by insisting that they're just being honest, honest, but their brand of honesty just plans on bursting the bubble or balloon of everyone they come into contact with. Whether it's telling DJ Spit that he should give up on his music career or discouraging 3D Squelton from becoming a balloon maker, these two are buzzkills in the purest sense of the word. But what really makes them stand out in terms of toxicity is the fact that they say these painful truths to people who don't even ask for them.
We only tell the truth, even when it hurts.
If they were like the Smiling Friends waiting for people to come to them for brutal honesty, it'd be a different story. But then again, I guess that wouldn't be the best business model. Unrequited love is one thing, but unrequited friendship can sometimes be even more dangerous. Take it from Mr. Landlord and Alan. It's been said that guys want only one thing, but I couldn't disagree more. Guys want three things: to smoke weed, fill their bellies with diet soda, and play Burnout Revenge for the PS2. At least if those guys are landlords, that's what they want, specifically with their friendly neighborhood Alan. When Alan shows no interest in hanging out with the landlord, the latter goes bonkers and decides to make the perfectly rational decision to spend 8 months and almost $1 million planning the most chaotic, convoluted adventure to lure Alan to his apartment to hang out, under the threat of blowing up the whole building. Mr. Landlord's obsession is a whole new level of messed up, and when he failed, seppuku was apparently the only option he saw out of facing the shame of his failure. But we have to admit, we do feel a little bad for the guy. I mean, all he wanted was for a friend to play Burnout Revenge with him. Isn't that all any of us want in life? That doesn't excuse what he did by any means, but it at least offers an explanation. Up next, we have a special appearance from Mr. Boss and Brittany, owners of Brittany's Beautiful Demonic Flowers. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, sorry, I zoned out. Where was I? Oh, we're on the boss and Brittany. When did that happen? Well, Brittany is the literal daughter of Satan, who married the boss for the sake of brainwashing him, using him as a puppet to take over the Smiling Friends from the inside. That would mean that the Smiling Friends will be owned by Satan? With such a diabolical plan, this is actually a pretty generous placement if you ask us. There was never any genuine love between these two, particularly not on Brittany's end. The only reason we don't place them even lower is the fact that Brittany's abuse of the boss wasn't something with a personal grudge behind it. She's literally just a demon who saw an opportunity to expand her influence. Next up, we have the relationship between Wimbley and the CEO. You'd think this bubble bass lookalike would be more grateful to Wimbley for practically carrying the company on his back. All those fancy chicken nuggets and Transformer knockoff mascots you can afford are thanks to Wimbley, man. Yet the moment Wimbley shows up, he resorts to insulting him and sarcastically complimenting his solo career. I guess you could argue that Wimbley left the company that helped push him into the limelight in the first place, which is fair enough. Not exactly a justifiable reason to treat him so poorly, but if nothing else, it would explain why he resents him. Given how the CEO treats him, though, even going as far as to try and murder Wimbley when he plans to make his own independent Wimbley game, it's not hard to see why the guy might have left in the first place. Though I will admit, the threat of gun violence was pretty overboard, but props to the CEO for not reporting that, because he probably could have gotten Wimbley thrown in jail if he wanted to. Landing just outside the bottom 5, we have the relationship between the aliens and Pim and Charlie. At face value, I could totally see a case for these guys being at the furthest end of our list. They kidnapped Charlie and Pim, dissected their best friend Bill, and forced them under the threat of eternal torture to blow up an entire planet, only telling them after the fact that the planet was uninhabited. In their defense, it was just a prank, bro. An alien prank. We've always got to take into account the fact that these guys are literally from a culture light years away from Charlie and Pim's, so what might seem like ecocide to us could just be a harmless prank to them. Like Mr. Boss said, there's no such thing as a bad culture. And hey, at least the aliens and the besties were able to party together for a while, which was nice, but sadly good times don't automatically erase the hurt you cause someone. If there's any duo that represents that even better than the previous one, it's definitely Mip and Charlie. They end up hitting it off right away in the Enchanted Forest, with Mip saving Charlie and Pim from an evil witch and even providing Charlie a potion to cure his headache. As Charlie proceeds to slay dragons, gather treasure, and save civilizations in the forest, Mip sings all of his great heroic deeds and even chooses him as a hero worthy of delivering his handmade gift to the princess. This all makes Mip sound like a genuinely good friend, and we'd agree with such a sentiment if it weren't for the fact that Mip was just manipulating Charlie to use him as a fall guy. The gift in question from Mip was actually a bomb planned to be hand-delivered to the princess, who barely managed to toss it away in time. That recontextualizes everything about Mip and Charlie's friendship throughout the episode. This guy befriended Charlie and tried to seduce him at one point, with the full intention to send him in as a suicide bomber, all for the sake of a twisted, non-reciprocal crush. Oh, and the headache poison? Turns out Charlie was severely allergic to it, or it was poison, whichever one you believe is funnier. Honestly, the fact that he started to legitimately seduce Charlie, but backed off when he remembered he was sending him to his grave, says all you needed to know about these two. Before the bottom three, we have one last umbrella entry, Salty and his mascots. He may miss out on the podium of toxicity, but he provides the world with America's favorite form of toxicity, fast food. Or at least he once did, but once the media got on his butt about making healthier menu items, he started making changes to the restaurant that his mascots didn't exactly agree with. Some of them disagreed with his choices, others resented the high workloads, one of them was straight up having an affair with him, but these weird mascots all had one thing in common. Every last one of them was fully prepared to murder Salty. Little did they know, his iconic 7 p.m. nap was actually him completely dead after a heart attack, so while the mascots didn't actually kill Salty, all 7 of them fully believed they did. Except Grease. He could have done it, but he didn't. That's some restraint. I hope Grease is doing alright. The bronze medal of toxicity goes to the workplace relationship between Rex and Mr. Frog. 47 seasons of successful television wasn't enough for Rex to foster a sense of loyalty towards his most valuable client. As soon as Mr. Frog got canceled for inhaling a TMZ reporter, Rex abandoned ship and started looking for his replacement. If Rex had fired Mr. Frog for moral reasons, we'd understand, but Rex doesn't seem to care one way or another about who Mr. Frog is hurting or what crime he commits, as long as his own reputation is sound. If how he treats Glep is any indication of the pressure and abuse he put Mr. Frog under, it's not hard to see why he became an impulsive, drug-addicted sociopath. Seriously, Rex doesn't stop at intimidating and berating his employees. He goes as far as to physically restrain or strike them whenever they risk what he thinks is the right idea for the show. That said, even though Rex was undeniably a horrible person, I still think being eaten alive in seconds was a bit of an overreaction by Mr. Frog. But then again, he was insulting me, hello? The top 2 toxic relationships were a bit tricky to pick between, but we've decided the runner-up position goes to Charlie and James. Wherever there's someone spreading goodwill, there's someone ready and willing to take advantage of it. When local sadistic bodybuilder James pays a visit to the Smiling Friends' office, he basically forces Charlie to be his manservant for the day. From breaking a ton of the Smiling Friends building's property, to verbally abusing Charlie, to finally ripping his nose off his face and proceeding to mock him while he's on a call with 911. James is a whole nother level of unstable and unhinged, and to make matters worse, in the end credits scene, it's revealed that he inexplicably has a framed photo of Charlie and feels bad that he pushed him away. I guess this gives James a somewhat sympathetic quality, but it's also a little creepy when you think about it. Like, does he have some sort of a parasocial relationship with Charlie? Is he a stalker? Because if so, that's another pretty darn toxic trait. But while James might be a sadistic bully with a serious drinking problem, the gold medal of toxicity has to go to the king of stalking. It's the relationship between Mip and the princess. Now, right off the bat, I doubt I need to explain to anyone why Mip is this high up. He's been stalking the princess for so long that she's had to relocate twice to get away from him. Let that sink in. This is a princess, like a major figure of royalty with countless servants, and she still somehow has been followed to the point of moving by this bootleg hobbit twice.
He's my stalker.
What?
Honestly, the fact that Mip's death was what made the princess smile says all you really need to know. And on top of being terrified of him, she almost got blown up by him with a bomb that only had 3 seconds on its timer. The princess is a truly tragic victim, but honestly, I can't help but feel a little bit of pity for Mip. Let me be clear, I am not defending Mip, but like, imagine obsessing over someone so much that your entire goal is literally to get with them or die trying. Parasocial relationships are real and they're dangerous, and Pim was so delusional that being blocked on everything, seriously, does Enchanted Forest even have a social media system, and moved away from twice wasn't enough. The guy still thought he had a shot and manipulated 2 innocent people into delivering a bomb to her in person, knowing full well they'd die in the crossfire. How Mip sank this low is anyone's guess, but I'm gonna hold that this non-existent bond with the princess is the absolute highest form of toxicity this series' relationships have.